There once was a poor mason or bricklayer in Grenada who kept all the saints' days and holy days and Saint Monday in the bargain, and yet he grew poor and could scarcely earn bread for his numerous family. One night he was roused from his first sleep by a knock at the door. He opened it and beheld before him a tall, meager, endeavorous-looking priest. "Hello, honest friend," said the stranger. "I have often observed that you are a good Christian and one to be trusted. Will you undertake a job this very night?" "With all my heart, Señor Padre, on a condition that I am paid accordingly, as a servant is worthy of a man's hire." "That you shall be, but you must suffer yourself to be blindfolded." To this the mason made no objection. So being hoodwinked, he was led by the priest through a various rough lanes and winding passages until he stopped before the portals of a house. The priest then applied a key, turning a creaking lock and opening what seemed to be a ponderous door. They quickly entered. The door was closed and bolted, and the mason was conducted through an echoing corridor and spacious hall into the interior part of the building. Here the bandages was removed from his eyes, and the rest of that I cannot make out, brothers and sisters, but we'll continue. In the center was the dry basin of an old Moorish fountain, under which the priest requested him to form a small vault. Bricks and mortar being at hand for that purpose, he accordingly worked all night, but without finishing the vault. Just before daybreak, the priest put a piece of gold in his hand, and having again blindfolded him, conducted him back to his dwelling. "Are you willing to return and complete your work?" "Gladly, Señor Padre, provided I am well paid." "Well then, tomorrow at midnight I will call again." "Now," said the priest, "you must help me to bring forth the bodies that are to be buried in this vault." At these words he followed the priest with trembling steps into a retired chamber of the mansion, expecting to behold some ghastly spectacle of death, but was relieved on seeing 3 or 4 portly jars standing in one corner. They were evidently full of money, and it was great difficulty that he and the priest carried them to the tomb. The vault was then closed, the pavement replaced, and all traces of the work obliterated. The mason was again hoodwinked and led forth by a route different from that which he had come. After they had wandered for a long time through a perplexed maze of lanes and alleys, they halted. The priest then put 2 pieces of gold into his hand. "Wait here," said he, "until you hear the cathedral bell. If you presume to uncover your eyes before that time, evil will befall you." So saying, he departed. The mason waited faithfully, amusing himself by weighing the gold pieces in his hand and clinking them against each other. The moment the bell rang its matin peal, he uncovered his eyes and found himself on the banks of the Pinal, from whence he made the best of his way home, and reveled with his family for a whole fortnight on the profits of his night's work, after which he was as poor as ever. He continued to work a good deal to keep saints' days and holy days from year to year, while his family grew up as gaunt as a crew of gypsies. As he was seated one morning at the door of his house, he was accosted by a rich old man, who was noted for owning many houses and being a griping landlord. The man of money eyed for a moment from beneath a pair of shaggy eyebrows. "I am told, friend, that thou art poor." "There is no denying the fact, Señor. It speaks for itself." "I presume then you will be glad of a job and work cheap?" "As cheap, my master, as any man in Grenada." "That's what I want. I have an old house going to decay that costs me more than it is worth to keep it in repair, for nobody will live in it, so I must contrive to patch it up and keep it together at as small as expense as possible." The mason was accordingly conducted to a huge deserted house that seems going to ruin. Passing through several halls and chambers, he entered to an inner court, where his eyes was caught by an old Moorish fountain. This is like in Circle 7, the brother that was tilling the land, and he had all the gold underneath, but the other brother had the higher gnosis, "It seems to me," said he, "as if I had been in this place before, but it is like a dream. Who occupied the house formerly?" "A pest upon him." cried the landlord. "It was an old miserly priest who cared for nothing but himself. It was supposed he would leave all his treasures to the church. He died suddenly, and the friars thronged it to take possession of his money, but nothing could they find but a few ducats in a leather purse. The worst luck has fallen upon me, for since his death, the fellow continues to occupy my house without paying rent. I find there is no taking the law of a dead man." The people pretend to hear the clinking of gold all night in the chamber where the old man slept, as if he was counting his money, and sometimes groaning and moaning about the court. Whether true or false, these stories have brought a bad name about my house, and not a tenant will remain within it. "Enough," cried the mason sturdily. "Let me live in your house rent-free until some better presents, and I will engage to put it in repair and quit the troubled spirits that disturb it. I am a good Christian and a poor man, and not to be daunted." The offer of the poor man was very readily assented to. He moved with his family into the house and continued his engagements. By little and little, he restored it to its former state. There was no longer heard the clinking of gold at night in the chamber, but it began to be heard by day in the pocket of the living mason. In a word, he increased rapidly in wealth, to the admiration of all his neighbors, and became one of the richest men in Grenada. He gave large sums to the church, by way no doubt of satisfying his conscience, and on his deathbed to his son and heir. So what is my conclusion to this story? Why are you reading this? Why are you reading this story, Latif? It's definitely exoteric. You know, we have a mason. We have him being blindfolded and taken on a path. He knew about treasures that only him and the priest knew about of a treasure. And then he later came back and received the treasure, and then it was given to his heirs. And it was also a treasure that was abandoned. You know what I'm saying? And again, like I said, one of the main reasons is I seen that it was in harmony with the teal story in the Prophet's Quran. So it's definitely exoteric, and it's a tale from Grenada. I hope you all enjoy, brothers and sisters. Like I said, you may not like all the videos. I overturn every stone that I can find. And when I find one that I see is special, I try to share it with you, brothers and sisters. Islam, divine honors to Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish divine and national movement of the world. I yield the floor.